Your reaction is your power. There's a moment, a split second, between what happens and how you choose to respond. That moment right there, that's everything. That's where your authority lives. That's where emotional control is either claimed or handed away. Because the reality is, most people don't respond, they react. And when you react, you're not in control. You're being controlled. We live in a world that pulls at us constantly. A sharp comment, a passive-aggressive text, a tone that doesn't sit right. It happens in conversations with coworkers, arguments with partners, tense exchanges on the street. And in those moments, your nervous system gets activated. Your body tightens, your breath shortens, your mind races ahead, looking for a way to win. That's the space where most people explode, defend, lash out, or shut down. But the one who owns their reaction, they own the situation. This doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you understand that how you feel isn't always how you need to act. Feelings are data, not directions. You can feel irritated and still choose patience. You can feel angry and still choose calm. That's where your real power shows up. When you don't let someone else decide the tone of your day. Because when you allow that, you've already lost. You're living in response to someone else's emotional immaturity. Imagine someone throws a match toward dry grass. You can either let it ignite and burn everything, or you can stamp it out before it catches. That's your choice. Every moment is that choice. You are not required to participate in every emotional invitation sent your way. Just because someone wants a reaction doesn't mean you owe them one. That need to clap back or prove your point, that's often just your ego trying to stay in the room. But your peace doesn't argue. Your peace doesn't yell. Your peace stands still and speaks low. Because here's the truth. You don't look strong when you react emotionally. You look rattled. You look like they touched something in you haven't dealt with yet. But when you pause, breathe, and respond from a place of clarity, now you're in command. People feel that. That's the difference between reacting and leading. One is impulsive, the other is intentional. Control isn't loud. It doesn't need to dominate. Control is calm. It knows it has options. It knows it's not at the mercy of every trigger. And the more you practice this, the more powerful you become. Because most people don't know how to hold silence. Most people don't know how to hear something uncomfortable and stay composed. But when you do, you shift the entire tone of the room. You create safety, not just for others, but for yourself. Your reaction is your power because it's the one thing no one can take unless you give it. You don't get to choose what people say to you, but you always get to choose what you do with it. Someone insults you, fine, let them speak. Let them show you who they are. That's data, that's useful. But you don't need to engage with it. You don't need to validate it by responding with equal energy. If someone throws dirt at you, you can choose not to throw it back. You don't have to match the chaos. You can interrupt it. And that's leadership. That's emotional discipline. That's self-respect. People who can't manage their reactions are constantly giving away their peace. They become puppets pulled by strings they don't even see. But when you start seeing your reaction as a decision, not just a reflex, you gain freedom. You create distance between what happens and what it means for you. Some people will push your buttons just to see if they still work. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a test of your growth. You don't need to defend yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to break your peace to correct someone who's not even listening. When you start mastering your reactions, you stop feeling the need to control everything around you because your internal space is solid. You're not responding from fear. You're responding from focus. Sometimes the most powerful move is the one you don't make. The argument you don't join, the post you don't reply to, the insult you don't dignify, and not because you're afraid, but because you're above it, because you know your energy is currency, and you don't spend it on things that don't grow your peace or protect your purpose. Your reaction is your power, because it's the only thing that's truly yours. People can take your time, they can challenge your thoughts, they can even affect your circumstances, but your response, that's you. That's the version of you that no one else gets to script. It's where your maturity speaks, your patience breathes, and your dignity stands tall. And the more you protect that reaction space, the more you start to notice how much energy you used to waste, How many hours were spent replaying conversations? How many relationships were harmed by knee-jerk replies? How much peace was lost over things that were never worth it? That awareness becomes armor. It sharpens your self-control, your communication, your emotional IQ, because now you're not just reacting, you're choosing. There's nothing passive about not reacting. It's actually one of the most assertive things you can do. It says, I choose not to participate in this chaos. I choose not to give this power over me. I choose my presence over pettiness. And that choice rewrites the whole story. Because in that stillness, you're not just avoiding a fight. You're setting the tone. You're owning the space. You're preserving the integrity of who you are, no matter what's happening around you. When you learn to respond, not react, you don't just control the moment. You shape the entire dynamic because your reaction has ripple effects. It influences how people treat you, how conflicts evolve, how relationships grow or dissolve. And when you stay centered, you don't just protect your peace. You raise the standard for everyone around you. Silence is a strategy, not surrender. We're taught early on that silence means weakness, that if you don't respond, you're losing, that if you don't speak up right away, you're being walked over. But that's not the whole truth. That's just noise from people who think loud means strong. What they don't understand is that silence isn't absence, it's presence under control. When you stay silent, you're not retreating, you're observing, you're watching the situation play out without rushing to be the first voice in the room. Because sometimes the strongest person isn't the one with the last word, it's the one with the clearest mind. Silence isn't the absence of power, it's the application of wisdom. In high-pressure moments, the instinct is to speak, defend yourself, clarify your point, prove them wrong. But real control isn't proven through volume. It's proven through restraint. That pause, that breath, that decision to wait before speaking. That's where clarity lives. That's where your emotional intelligence gets to stretch its legs. Silence allows you to stay ahead, to hear more than words, to read tone, body language, intent. Because if you speak too soon, you lose that perspective. You jump into someone else's rhythm instead of protecting your own. You're reacting, not responding. You're getting pulled instead of standing still. There's power in not moving just because someone expects you to. There's power in choosing your moment, not being forced into theirs. When you hold your silence, you're signaling to the room that you're not easily swayed. You're not jumping into conflict for sport. You're weighing, watching, waiting. And that waiting isn't weakness. It's wisdom. You don't need to prove your intelligence in every conversation. Sometimes your silence proves your maturity. Sometimes your stillness shows more discipline than 1,000 words ever could, because you're not trying to win an argument. You're protecting your peace. You're preserving your clarity. You're listening not just to reply, but to understand where this is really going. A lot of people speak from emotion, not from thought, not from truth, just raw reaction. And if you answer that too soon, you're answering a storm, not a message. Silence helps you separate the heat from the signal. It lets the dust settle before you make a move, because not every emotional wave deserves your response. And silence helps you see which ones are real and which ones are just noise. People will often mistake your silence for uncertainty. Let them. Let them fill the silence with assumptions. Let them guess what you're thinking. That's not your concern. Your concern is remaining in control of yourself. Let them talk themselves tired. You're not here to convince. You're here to observe and protect your energy, because silence is a boundary. When you stay quiet, you're saying, I will not be dragged into this. I will not escalate this situation. I will not let your chaos dictate my character. You can scream, insult, push, but I decide when I engage. And that's not passivity. That's ownership. That's the kind of self-discipline that makes people rethink how they approach you. Silence is where you gather yourself. It's where you filter your emotion before you speak. It's where you make sure that what comes out of your mouth adds value instead of just adding volume. Some of the most damaging things we say happen when we don't take that pause. One sentence said in anger can rewrite a relationship. One reaction said too soon can break something that took years to build. But silence gives you space. Space to decide if this conversation deserves your voice or just your attention. You don't need to match someone's intensity to prove you're strong. Your silence already proves you're not easily shaken. You don't need to raise your voice to protect your point. You can keep your tone low, your words few, and still hold the entire room in check. Because silence demands attention. When you go quiet, people listen differently. They notice, they lean in, they start to measure their words more carefully because you've created a space that says, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to process. And if you want my voice, it has to be worth my clarity. That's a powerful standard to set in business, in relationships, in every room you enter, and not just for conflict. Even in daily life, silence has its place. In meetings, in decision-making, in negotiations, the person who can hold their tongue while others scramble to speak often comes out ahead because they're playing the long game. They're not jumping to fill the silence. They're letting others reveal their cards first. Silence creates contrast. It gives weight to the words you do choose because when you're not constantly speaking, people pay attention when you finally do. Your voice carries more power not because it's louder, but because it's rarer. And in a world full of noise, rarity stands out. There's a reason interrogators fear silence, a reason negotiators use it as leverage, a reason leaders pause before speaking. It's not hesitation, it's calculated timing. And when you use silence strategically, you turn every word into a tool instead of a reaction. Silence doesn't mean you're avoiding hard conversations. It means you're approaching them with discipline. It doesn't mean you're afraid. It means you've learned that not everything requires your defense. Some things require distance. Some moments need stillness. Some exchanges are tests, not invitations. And silence gives you time to tell the difference. You may be tempted to speak just to relieve the tension, but sometimes tension is useful. Sometimes it's the only thing that stops a conversation from sliding into chaos. Your silence sets the limit. It sets the pace. It says, I don't move just because you do. I don't react just because you're loud. I don't lower my standard just because you've lost yours. This is where real strength is built, in the restraint. In the self-respect it takes not to jump into every fire. In the quiet confidence that knows, I don't need to explain myself to everyone. I don't need to be understood by people who aren't listening. I don't need to win a moment at the cost of my long-term peace. Let them misread you. Let them underestimate you. Let them think silence means surrender. That's the beauty of this strategy. It doesn't work until you see it through. You don't explain your silence. You just let it do the work. You let people reveal themselves. You let situations evolve without forcing them. Because silence, when used with purpose, is a signal. It says, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to protect my space, my time, my focus. I'm here to navigate, not escalate. I'm here to be effective, not reactive. I'm here to think, not flinch. I'm here to listen first. Control comes from clarity, not control over others. We've been conditioned to think that control means having the upper hand, that it means getting people to do what we want, that the louder voice wins, the tougher stance dominates, and the firmest grip holds the most power. But that's surface-level thinking, because real control, lasting, sustainable, calm control, doesn't come from bending people to your will. It comes from being anchored in who you are and clear on what matters. Clarity is the foundation of control. Without it, you're not leading, you're reacting, you're not managing situations, you're being dragged by them. The person who seeks to control others is usually the one most out of control within. They're trying to fix the outside world to avoid facing the chaos inside, but when you have clarity, you don't need to grab for control. You already have it, not over others, but over yourself. Clarity gives you something that manipulation never will: peace. When you're clear on your values, your boundaries, your purpose, you don't need to micromanage everything around you. You don't need to dominate conversations, push agendas, or control people's opinions. That behavior usually comes from fear. Fear of losing relevance, fear of uncertainty, fear of being misunderstood. But clarity replaces that fear with direction. It says, I know who I am, I know what I need, and I'm not here to manage anyone else's reactions to it. Trying to control people is exhausting because people are unpredictable. Emotions shift, situations change, and when your sense of power depends on managing how others move, you'll always be on edge. That's not control, that's insecurity dressed as leadership. But clarity grounds you. It gives you the confidence to let things unfold without forcing them, because you're not chasing outcomes, you're aligned with intention. Clarity helps you respond, not react. It slows you down just enough to ask, what actually matters here? Is this about being right or being respectful? Is this about proving a point or preserving peace? Is this about winning a moment or leading with purpose? When you're clear, those decisions get easier. You're not caught up in the drama because you can see through it. You're not triggered by every word because you're not looking for validation in other people's behavior. Your control doesn't come from controlling them. It comes from understanding you. The mistake people make is thinking that leadership is control, that being in charge means controlling the environment. But strong leadership doesn't show up in micromanagement. It shows up in alignment. When you're aligned with your core values, your priorities, your energy, you stop trying to make everything bend to you. You focus instead on how you carry yourself within it. Clarity gives you focus. It filters out the distractions. You don't need to get involved in every issue, respond to every jab, or fix every misunderstanding. You don't need to control how people see you. That's their lens, not your responsibility. Clarity helps you release that urge to defend your name in every room where someone speaks it, because you know who you are. And when you know who you are, other people's narratives don't rattle you. Their behavior may shift, but your foundation doesn't. People who operate from control often don't realize they're running from uncertainty. The unpredictable nature of life makes them feel unsteady, so they try to compensate, overcorrect, by managing everyone else. But life doesn't reward control. It rewards clarity. The person who walks with clarity doesn't chase things. They attract. They don't demand obedience. They inspire trust. They don't overpower. They align. You can feel it when someone is clear. Their tone is calm. Their decisions are grounded. Their presence is steady because they're not playing defense all day. They're not in survival mode. They're not threatened by opposition because they're not dependent on agreement. That's a different kind of power, the kind that doesn't raise its voice to be heard, the kind that doesn't need to coerce to be respected. When you operate with clarity, you stop negotiating your values just to keep the peace. You stop chasing relationships that require you to perform. You stop bending yourself into shapes just to make others feel comfortable. You stand where you are, and from that place, you move with direction, not desperation. You don't try to control how fast someone grows, how soon they understand, or how gently they speak. You control the one thing you've always had power over, yourself. That's not passive. That's powerful. Because the more secure you become in who you are, the less you need to convince anyone else of anything. You stop living in reaction to the noise around you. You stop taking things personally that were never about you. You stop pouring energy into things that don't align with your clarity. There's a difference between influence and control. Influence invites, control demands, influence holds space, control fills it, and when you lead with clarity, your influence grows naturally. People trust those who are calm under pressure. They follow those who don't flinch when things go sideways. They feel safer around those who don't explode or manipulate. That safety is created through clarity. You don't have to control a conversation to shape it. You don't have to dominate a meeting to lead it. You don't have to win every debate to hold your dignity. Clarity allows you to choose your moments wisely, to know when to speak, when to listen, when to hold, when to release. That's precision. That's maturity. That's control born from clarity. It also gives you better boundaries. When you're clear on what's yours and what's not, you stop absorbing other people's emotional mess. You don't take on what isn't yours to carry. You don't jump in to fix people who aren't ready to grow. You don't chase closure from people who've already shown you their limits. That clarity protects your peace. It preserves your energy. It sharpens your focus. You lead your day differently when you're clear. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with intention. You disengage from things that once pulled you in. You no longer feel the need to control people because you're too focused on managing your own state. That self-management becomes your strength, not your ego, not your reputation, not your ability to out-talk the next person, but your ability to stay aligned when things get loud, messy, unpredictable. People who lack clarity get pulled in every direction. They move based on opinions, not values. They react to every fire, not realizing most of them don't need water, they just need distance. But when you have clarity, you don't panic. You assess. You ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this align with my goals? Does this move me closer to the person I'm trying to become? Because control isn't about force. It's about freedom. Freedom from emotional reactivity, from ego-driven responses, from external validation. Clarity gives you that freedom. It makes your yes stronger, your no cleaner, your presence sharper. And when you have that, you don't chase control. You carry it with you.